or anything like that, because we will email it, send it your way. So secondly, we are here because we want to answer your questions about ESG. So if there's anything you want to know or anything you're unsure of, please write your questions in the chat. We will try to answer as many as we can today. And if not, then we will get back to you via email. But don't worry, we will absolutely make sure that all of your questions do get answered. Okay, so I would also like to introduce myself. My name is Kiri Spanovic, and I am the Communications Officer for 50 Shades Greener. I've worked in and around the tourism and hospitality industry since 2018, but with a master's degree in biology, my passions lie primarily in sustainability and the somewhat unrelated field of marine biology. I would also like to extend a very warm welcome to Raquel Noboa, founder of CEO. There she is. Founder and CEO of 50 Shades Greener. She's here today because our budget didn't stretch to hire an external speaker. So I'm just kidding. I'm absolutely delighted that Raquel is here to join us today, as she has a wealth of firsthand experience being a business owner and successfully implementing an ESG culture in her own organization from the ground up. So her practical experience in this area is indeed very valuable. All right, so to get things started and cover our groundwork, what is ESG? ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. So more specifically, the E in ESG refers to the environmental performance of an organization. So this means assessing how your organization impacts the environment. The S refers to the social performance of an organization and whether it impacts people in a positive or negative way. Finally, the G is governance, which refers to how an organization is managed at the top. So it's policies, investments, board of directors, taxes, and wealth distribution. All the fun stuff. Now, I'm not sure how many of you had an opportunity to read my blog from earlier this month called Breaking Down ESG to Easy Peasy ESGeezy, but I made an analogy to a three-tiered cake, and we can use the same analogy here. So I would like you to think of ESG as a three-tiered cake. And as the three tiers go, there are three sections of ESG that we need to work on. All right. While it is all good and well to explain to you what the letters of ESG stand for, you probably could have just Googled them. So why don't we break them down a little bit into the main areas of focus? For the environment, we need to take into consideration greenhouse gases, pollution, biodiversity and ecosystems, and the circular economy and resource use. So these are the four main areas which encompass how an organization impacts the natural environment. For the social side, we need to take into consideration what kind of an impact our organization has on people. And by people, we mean employees, workers in the supply chain, hosting communities, and our clients. And finally, in governance, we need to assess the organization's policies, risk management, financial transparency, and the board of governance. So now you can see we've kind of broken it down, and we've got 12 key areas to manage, 4 for each component of ESG. I hope this makes it a little bit clearer, but don't forget, please put your questions in the chat, because really this webinar is about you, not us, because we know ESG. We make it our business. All right, so in theory, we know that we have to manage these 12 areas, but how do we do so? I would like to introduce you to the 50 Shades Greener method, which has 4 different phases. The first of these phases is to measure, because as we like to say here at FSG, what gets measured gets managed. We measure greenhouse gases or employee turnover, for example, and we develop our ESG metrics in the form of key performance indicators. Then we observe. This means conducting audits, observing our behavior, doing surveys or interviews with different groups of people under the social umbrella of ESG. So then from the measurement and observation phases, we can draw conclusions and priorities. Then you can develop an action plan focusing on the areas in most need of improvement. It's good to jump in head first and say, okay, let's start fixing things. But unless you know what to fix, you might just be wasting your time and energy. So that's why the two phases are really crucial of measuring and observing. All right. Lastly, we want to continue to monitor our key performance indicators and report on them regularly. So if we put this into practice with an example, we'll look at waste. So waste is something that we all produce. Whether we like it or not, we produce personal waste and at an organizational level as well. So if we want to start looking at our waste from using the FSG method, the first step would be to measure how much waste in kilos we produce in a given time period. So in a hotel, for example, your waste key performance indicator would be your kilograms of waste generated per customer. Once we know our waste indicator, we can move on to the observation phase. For this example, it would mean auditing our waste to understand what it is we're putting in the bins most, whether we have proper waste segregation systems, and whether or not our employees understand how to segregate waste correctly. From the results of these actions, we'll understand what our biggest pain points are for waste management, and then we can develop an action plan for improvements, and this means allocating people with the responsibility to implement the plan. Once the plan is implemented, we do it again. We measure our waste KPIs, and we compare the figures against the first ones, and you're going to quickly see if it improved or not. So I hope this example makes it a little bit more clear. I'll go into another one just to be sure. All right, so environmental stuff tends to be a little bit easier, at least for me personally. Maybe it's the biology background, I don't know. But when it comes to social and governance, this is where things get a little bit more blurry for me. So here's an example on the social side of it, the people part. So in this example, maybe we want to look at workforce gender equality. So pretty simply, we could easily measure the percent of men and women that work for the organization and their pay grades. We can then interview employees to understand their views on the gender distribution of the organization, but also with a quick payroll audit, we can identify if there are any disparities on pay grades based on gender. With those two in mind, we can develop a plan for improvement, which in this case would probably fall under the remit of the HR department. This plan might include a gender equality policy or changes to the pay grades within the organization. These are not necessarily changes we can make immediately, but we need to know what the issues are before we can fix them. And lastly, we can do the same measurement again as we did at the beginning and identify if our plan has worked or not. So if you break it down into these 4 steps, you can be making continuous improvements, and ultimately that's the goal. Okay, so now that I've covered a breakdown of ESG, I would love to invite Raquel to answer some of our burning questions.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Kiri.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Really good today.
Good. Happy you could be here.
Thank you.
All right, so to jump right in, the first question that I'm sure is on the mind of a lot of business owners is that there's new legislation happening that is going to be forcing companies to report on ESG, and it's going to be starting January 2025, right around the corner. So what companies will need to be making these reports? Is it all companies, some, just oil?
Yeah, it's all these things start in a very complicated way, but the EU CSRD has come into effect this year and is now mandatory for around 50,000 companies in the EU to report on their ESG performance every year. the main goal of this directive is to ensure consistent and comparable reporting of ESG performance from companies. And the directive is going to be rolled out in waves. So at the moment, for companies with more than 500 employees, it is now mandatory to report on ESG performance. Wave 2 will see this apply to all large companies who have more than 250 employees or 40 million euros in turnover. That is a big company. And these companies are going to have to report from 2026 with their 2025 data. Okay. So if you fall under this, even though you don't need to report until 2026, it is time now from January to start gathering your data. Wave 3 then is going to see the scope open up to include all listed small, medium-sized organizations. And this is where a lot of businesses are going to fall under this wave. So these will be companies with 50 to 250 employees or 8 to 40 million euro in turnover. They're going to have to report in 2027 before the 2026 data.
Yeah.
And then the last wave, the fourth wave, will expand the scope even further to really anyone with a company in the EU. So this might seem that for small businesses, say like us in 50 Shades Greener, that we wouldn't have to start reporting for another 3 to 4 years. However, because we are suppliers of those larger companies that already have to report, those companies are going to start asking us for our data so that they can include it within their own reports because we are suppliers of them. So really, the pressure for sustainability reporting is mounting for any size of organization really from January of next year.
Yeah. So even though, like you said, it might take a little while for smaller companies like ours, anywhere in the supply chain, any business you work with could come to you and ask for your ESG metrics. So better to have them handy and jump on that bandwagon now.
Yeah, we've even seen it ourselves. When you're a company that applies for public funding or public contracts, every single public tender right now is asking you for your ESG strategy or a minimum policy. So it's there is nowhere to hide anymore. Really.
Yep. It's here knocking on your door. Okay, great. And, as a business owner who implemented ESG, mindset into the organization, what do you feel are the main benefits of doing
that? So I guess this might sound ridiculous to some people, but for me, the first tangible benefit is that I can sleep well at night. I guess being the business owner, it's important for me that the way I conduct the business also aligns to my personal values. And unfortunately or fortunately, I'm the daughter of a politician, a socialist nonetheless in Spain. And I grew up watching my father fight for social justice in Spain after Franco's regime. So the concept of people first has always been part of my DNA. So for me, running an ESG-centric organization, it's definitely a no-brainer, and it's what makes me feel good about myself and about what I'm doing. But obviously, a very important thing to note here is that a properly implemented ESG strategy can save your business a lot of money. And this is really contrary to what the general perception is, that sustainability is going to cost a lot of money. But sustainability really involves finding ways to run our operations more efficiently, and that can generate huge cost savings. From our students in our programs, we're seeing reductions in operational cost of up to 30%, which is huge for any kind of business. Another benefit is also that you can improve staff retention and productivity, and obviously having less staff turnover saves money as well, reducing costs for training new employees. Because the ES of ESG, like you said earlier, is all about people. It's caring about your employees, your customer, your suppliers, and the wider community. And this ensures productivity and also brand reputation amongst the hosting community of your business. I think, it's very clear that customer values are changing, and we really need to align our business to those new values that people have. And the last benefit is the finance sector is also pushing the ESG agenda. Investors are now asking for ESG reports before they invest in companies. one of our clients signed his best refinancing deal last year because he was able to demonstrate they had an ESG policy and a strategy, and most important, they had measured all their ESG metrics. So
Yeah.
I guess sustainability used to be the nice thing to do, but now it really it's the smart thing to do from a business point of view.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes perfect sense. And I realized I got so caught up chatting with you that not only did I forget to skip, show the questions, but I switched the order on you. So I'm keeping you on your toes.
That's right. I'm used to live
So
interviews, Kiri.
you did great. You did great. But yeah, no, so it's fantastic. Like you said, it's a smart thing to do. And of course, you've got the policies that you need to create, but also like creating a culture in that, having your employees actually care and feel motivated. But back on the paperwork side of thing, what are some examples of ESG policies?
Yeah, so there are a lot of policies that you need to have. I always say that a policy without an implementation plan is just words written in a piece of paper. But policies are the starting point to that further implementation. So if we look at the different pillars, for example, in environmental policy, it's for the E part of ESG, and this policy sets out your intentions or the intention of your organization towards looking after the natural environment. This might be measuring your greenhouse gas emissions, also nature, ecosystems, circular economy. You can have a separate circular economy policy, which could be linked to innovation. How are we going to innovate within our business, so that our products follow circular economy principles. Then for the S, you need to have the obvious things like health and safety policies, but also equality, diversity, and inclusion policies, customer care policies, human rights policies for your employees, but also for your supply chain, because we need to be very careful with our suppliers as well, that there is no human rights infringements into any of our suppliers. And then in governance, we need to include things like a wealth distribution policy. How is the company going to distribute its revenue, take into account the E and the S on that wealth distribution, anti-corruption policies, risk management policies, etc. Actually, it might be helpful for people if they want to see your own 50 Shades Culinary ESG report. I will put it in the chat in a few minutes, and they can download it from the chat. So anybody that wants to see an ESG report, you can head to the chat and get it from there.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, not that I'm biased, but I think it's a pretty good ESG report.
Of course, you would think so.
Just sucking up to the boss. No, so that's great. And, we answered this question. So my last question is, now, despite the title, I'm sure not everything is necessarily easy peasy on this ESG journey. So can you talk us about some of the barriers or more main pain points that you experienced?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there are also many barriers, and more than barriers, maybe we call them difficult decisions that kind of test your ethics and your own values in a regular basis. Not everything is easy, it'd be a lie for us to sit here and say this is, there's not going to be difficulties along this journey. But I guess for me, things that have tripped me over time, when it comes to social sustainability, we in this company implemented a 4-day working week policy because we want our employees to strive for that work-life balance. And this was the case since I hired my very first employee.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, as the business owner, then we also have project deadlines approaching. And it is also my responsibility to our clients to ensure that we meet those deadlines. Often you find yourself maybe, or I find myself, this might not be the same issue for other business owners, that I work more hours than is possible in order to meet deadlines to also ensure my team can remain on their 4-day week. So putting the needs of those around you before your own needs is not easy. It is many times a struggle, but they are the kind of the ethical decisions that we have to make. Financially, last year, we invested 17% of our company profit in the well-being and upskilling of our team, which, again, not an easy decision to make. And 17% will seem quite high to other business owners, but obviously we learned from that experience, and based on that, then we had to make another difficult decision to change our learning and development policy and reduce the spend a little bit down to 10%. So those decisions are not always popular amongst everybody. I guess I'm the only person that has that wider view of the company, from not just from a people and planet perspective, but also from a financial perspective, and financial profit, they're not dirty words in the world of sustainability. There is room for all of it. And even regarding the environment, Kiri, I mean, we measure our emissions every single year. And for example, our business travel emissions in 2023 increased from 2022, since we became an international company and I started traveling all around the world. So, again, I don't have a solution for this yet. I haven't found the solutions to how we're going to reduce our business travel emissions. But that's okay as well. We must always remember that sustainability is a journey of continuous improvement, and that an ESG strategy needs to make sense to the business and its overall goals. And for the moment, I know when it comes to our emissions from business travel, all I can do is be transparent and accountable.
Yeah.
Or emissions reporting until we figure out a solution, or the airlines industry figures out a solution, I guess.
Yeah.
Another challenge sometimes is to find the right sustainability partners or training programs. And, in the world of creating skills and sustainability, there are many organizations that feel equipped to sell training programs that perhaps are not that fit for purpose, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
The market is kind of flooded now with training programs. The issue we can create with this is that some of them are a waste of time and money, and that's going to create a barrier to future training for anyone that kind of ends up with the wrong partner or the wrong training company. So finding a trusted sustainability partner to help you put together, that learning and development plan for the organization it's really a key to success, and a difficult one to achieve.
Yeah, I can imagine. And, it's a really good point you bring up about seeing, like, in your own company, the emissions going up as the company grows, because, obviously that's kind of naturally how it goes. You've got more employees using laptops, more electricity, etc. So I guess, like you said, the best you can do is adapt to changing circumstances the best way you know how. But indeed, it's a lot easier to adapt when you've got that fundamental, like, base core knowledge of, okay, I see these components, I know how to work with them, I know how to measure them and observe them and report and all those things. So
yeah, like you said before, you can't really find out where you need to take action unless you've kind of done that measurement and observation phases first. It's so important. We see so many businesses that you have a website full of actions, things they have done to support the environment, and they're all great, and they've put a lot of effort behind it, but they might not be tackling the issues that they should be tackling if they haven't really identified their priorities by measuring first their impact on people and planet. So it's a very, very important thing is to get those foundational steps right before you can start fixing things.
Yeah, otherwise you just end up doing a bunch of tree planting without knowing the pitfalls of tree planting. Not that it can't be great, but if that's all you're doing.
It's another day's webinar, Kiri.
Why tree planting doesn't work. Yeah, next title. Well, thank you so much for that. I hope our audience found your personal experiences useful, as I always do. And speaking of, education and embedding a culture of sustainability, let's take a brief look into how we can do that. Okay. So when we integrate sustainability into the culture of an organization, it's the sustainability manager or director that's going to develop the organization's sustainability strategy. This falls into the Green Skills Level 3 category, which is the highly specialized skills at the top of the pyramid. And this individual will have measured the organization's impact on the environment and develop a decarbonization strategy. So that's great, but, maybe that's one person or a small team, and the implementation of this strategy is going to need a bit more manpower. So it's going to become the role of managers and supervisors who we're going to need the, what we call green skills level 2, which is specified skills. So, they need to know how to implement, what steps they take, and they need to be able to understand the implementation strategy to implement it. But all that being said, none of it is going to work without raising the awareness of all employees within the organization with a green skills level 1 awareness. So, try as you might to implement more sustainable strategies within your organization. If people aren't aware or if they don't really care, ultimately nothing's going to get done. So, just to give a brief overview, and you can see that sustainability requires an all hands on deck approach, but it absolutely starts at the top with a fundamental knowledge and understanding of ESG. So with that being said, I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to give you some information about our ESG course. So our ESG leadership program is a really great first step when it comes to beginning your ESG journey. So it's a 6-month online program, and throughout the 6 months, you're supported by our expert educators. Your support is through a blended delivery of self-guided lessons and bi-weekly online check-ins. And the course will introduce you to your scope 1, 2, and most importantly, your scope 3 emissions, how to monitor and reduce them, as well as examining your social performance and taking a deeper look at your supply chain and evaluate the sustainability of your organization's governance. So the course is fully accredited by the United Nations Mandate University of Peace. And each learner will receive a certificate of SDG compliance. So just a note, this certificate, it certifies the leader, not the business, but it does offer the individuals the opportunities to learn the skills to be an ESG or sustainability manager within any organization. And our next cohort of students is set to deploy on the 26th of September, so in about a month. And we're only accepting 5 students because we want to keep groups small to provide support the best we possibly can. So if this is something you're interested in, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. And as I always say in my webinars, if you're unsure, as Raquel mentioned, the market is flooded with ESG courses out there. Take a look around. I always recommend doing your research before you commit to anything, because indeed you don't want to be wasting your time and money on a course that isn't up to par. And we definitely don't want to be wasting your time and money by providing a course that isn't up to par. So take a look around, and otherwise get in contact with us and we'd be happy to give you a chat and talk about it. So with that being said, I would like to thank you all so much for listening, and I would like to open the floor to answer any other questions you might have. So I know Raquel's been monitoring the chat for me. Is there anything that popped up?
Yeah, there was a question that came in by email before the webinar started, and that's: how is ESG different from corporate social responsibility?
It's all just a bunch of acronyms, isn't it?
I know, it's ESG or CSR.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm happy to take that one, Kiri. ESG is broader and more structured. It's often tied to financial performance, risk management, and kind of investor decision making. As we've already discussed today, it involves measurable, reportable data that can be quantified and compared across companies, while CSR, corporate social responsibility, emphasizes a company's ethical responsibility to contribute positively to society. So it's very much about people. It involves voluntary actions that go beyond compliance and laws and regulations. And it kind of focuses more on that philanthropy side of things, community engagement and ethical business practices. You don't really need to measure or report anything on CSR, but you do in ESG. So they are very, very different.
Okay, so then correct me if I'm wrong, but a good plan would be, to get your ESG metrics measured and reported on, and then start looking into the corporate social responsibility as kind of like a bonus, and what else can we do?
Exactly, and really the CSR falls under the S of ESG. So under that S, you're looking at, your employees, the suppliers, but your hosting community, and that's where that corporate social responsibility really should come in. So they're two completely different things.
Yeah. Okay.
Somebody's just saying that they have audio issues, and if we can forward the recording, but yeah, I believe we're sending all that after, Kiri, are we?
Yes, yeah. So if you missed the intro, no worries. We've recorded, and we will be sending everyone a recording of the webinar after, so you'll be able to catch up on anything you've missed and hopefully hear us.
And I know it's 3 o'clock, we need to close it off, but there's a question coming in as to what is greenwashing. So I think we have probably a couple of minutes for that one. Yeah, can we?
So it's a good one to address.
Yeah, so greenwashing is when a company exaggerates or falsely claims to be environmentally friendly or sustainable just to improve their public image or their appeal. So essentially, it's when a company markets itself as green without actually being green. And this is where ESG reporting again is it's important that we tell the good, the bad, and the ugly, because when we're only reporting on the things that we do good, we're going to be raising eyebrows. Well, you can't be perfect. Nobody's perfect. So very important in ESG reporting to be transparent and to say the things you do well, but also the things that you're aware you're not doing so well, so that you can avoid that horrible greenwashing.
Yeah, like you mentioned before, accountability.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Great. Well, I think that it's probably all the time we have for questions, but if anyone has any additional questions, feel free to email us. You can write them in the chat, in our last couple minutes, and we'll address them. But with that, we've reached the end of our webinar, and I would like to thank you all again for being here today. So if anyone would like more information regarding anything we've talked about in today's session, you can visit us at www.50shadesgreener.ie or get in touch with us and book a call with Raquel at info@50shadesgreener.ie. So thank you all one last time for joining us, and hopefully we've given some clarity on ESG and your sustainability journey. And I believe Raquel sent our ESG report in the chat, so if you'd like to peruse that, feel free. Otherwise, have a lovely day. Hopefully I see you all soon. Oh, we've got some. You're all welcome. Sorry, I was just got distracted reading all the thank yous in the chat. Thank you all for coming, and you're very welcome.